Hello, everyone. Today we're talking about art, science, and technology. We're going to start off with Antony Gormley, who's someone we also started off the semester with, but I think I promised you we'd see him again. And this series of work is called the Quantum Cloud series, and really using scientific physics as the inspiration here. And he's got kind of a nice short artist statement, so I just want to read to you real quick. How can you convey the fact that the presence of someone is greater or different from their appearance? The domains allowed me to evoke the internal space of the body as a field, but are still bound to an invisible skin. I want to extend or ignore the skin. The quantum clouds continue the matrix of domains into the outer space through the continuation of branching connections, positioning the original body within a wider field. It is an open question that quantum clouds, whether the body is emerging from the chaotic energy field or the field of the body. So, not the best read, I apologize, but I think you get the picture. And I think they're kind of direct, but fairly well done and diverse in the way that he approached them. This is an interesting piece where some people, initially are like, wait, how is this art? Isn't it just science? Or, but I think it's the way that she went about it really was kind of with the toolbox of an artist, and then the way that she presents it also. This is kind of a little arrangement that she had outside of a TED Talk that she did. But what's interesting about the mushroom burial stew is that each one of those little kind of bits of yarn are inoculated with mycelium that she figured out will break down the toxins in the human body. And she really focused on this work because she saw just how many pounds of mercury were put into the atmosphere every year through cremation. And so she didn't think it was a very sustainable burial practice. And she thinks that our culture has kind of a way of denying death, and that this is what she sees as a step in the right direction to not only embrace death but rebirth, because your body is consumed by the mushrooms and then turned into, it filters the toxins out, and then you can re-enter the world, the earth, in a more sustainable way. The Hive by Wolfgang Buttress. This is a pretty cool piece. I'm just going to play a short video so that you can really see it in action, because it's something that it's not static. You really got to see it in motion or be there to appreciate it, I think.
Hand me the ground. I won't let you down.
So I think it's pretty beautiful. I hope you think so too. I should correct myself and say that it's not actually in motion, right? It's not kinetic sculpture, but being able to see kind of the camera move around it and some of the lights as they kind of dim or get brighter. And just to kind of reiterate that that sculpture is actually connected to a beehive, right? So I think it's a pretty amazing example of art and technology, or art, science, and technology, uh, to kind of blow up a hive in a visual way. The colony is kind of being the selfless thing as well. So uh, if anyone ever gets to go, please let me know. It's one that I'd like to see in person. Let's kind of stick on the note of bees for just a moment. Heather Green, a portrait of 100 native bees. She's really interested in just how we think about the honeybee and we think about how important the honeybee is, and we sometimes get sidetracked with the fact that there are, a huge variety of native bees as well that we don't necessarily help out, right? I think there's some, she kind of points to some research about dandelions and how if you really want to help bees, it's don't poison the dandelions because it's the first flower that comes up in the spring, and the bees really um, like those first flowers, and sometimes we're poisoning colonies that way. And so it is, fairly scientific. You got your scientific name down there and all kind of lettered out, but she arranges them in a rather non-scientific way, right? If this was a science exhibit, it'd probably be gridded out in some um, form or another. So I think she kind of leaves the door open there for exploration a little bit, and kind of an interesting way of looking at didactics as well. So, this is going to be another just short video. Sorry. It's a song of our warming planet, and I know that this is music, but music is art too. And a lot of times we have musicians in class, so I just kind of want to throw in that way, and I think it's good.
I was in a class with Professor Scott St. George in the geography department, and at one point he posted a slide advertising for interns in his dendrochronology lab, and I was lucky enough to get that job. He came to me with a set of data with the task of turning it into a piece of music, and we wound up with a song of our warming planet. In the piece of music, each note will correspond to a year, and then the pitch of that note will represent the temperature of that year. So then these really high pitches, that would mean a warmer year, and then the lower pitches would be a cooler year. Data comes from the Goddard Institute for Space Studies at NASA. It's a compilation of global annual surface air temperatures. Climate scientists have a standard toolbox to communicate their data. What we're trying to do is we're trying to add another tool to that toolbox, another way to communicate these ideas to the people who might get more out of this than out of maps, graphs, and numbers. Climate change is a defining issue of our generation, and it's still something that a lot of people don't fully understand. And what we're trying to do is to represent with the music sort of the immediacy and the importance that this issue has right now. And if we act on that, then maybe it won't be as much of an issue for the future.
So bear with me here. Pretty well done. I think there's a couple things that really stand out. It's just that they kind of emphasize that if projections are on point, that they'll produce a series of notes that are out of the range of human hearing. And then again, the way that the graph kind of slides, you can see it here in the bottom left-hand corner, where we're kind of at the top end of the graph. That bottom left-hand corner, you can see where it goes underneath the value right there of the years. So yeah, kind of well done. Next of kin, this is Seeing Extinction. This is done by the same project that High Water Line was done in an earlier lecture, called the Canary Project. It's a bunch of art science pieces. So if you're interested, I really recommend you take a look. The Canary Project is kind of being a little play on words there for the canary in the coal mine. You know, they used to bring a canary with them, and if the canary passed out or died, then they all knew they had to get out of there, or they were going to be soon to follow, right? And here are a bunch of it's called Seeing Extinction, right? So it's an exhibit of mostly mammals that are on the brink or have gone extinct. So. Now this is a funny one. Maybe not funny at all to some people, but I guess it's just out there. The GFP bunny, and it's a artwork that is a creation of so it stands for Green Fluorescent Rabbit, ALBA. And it really engaged a public dialogue generated by this project of it was genetically modified to glow in the dark, right? So it was really ahead of its time. You can see that it started in 1998. They're really thinking about, the potential moral quandaries of genetically modifying something, and this really raised quite a stir. If there's anyone in biology, I'm sure this will come up at some point in your education. But in the past couple years, I can't remember exactly, there's the first genetically modified babies, right? This new technology called CRISPR, and the scientific community was really kind of up in arms at this because it was said that it shouldn't be done on humans yet. And I believe it was a Chinese scientist, and he went ahead and did it to twin girls, and they're supposed to be now immune to AIDS. So it could be a really great thing, but it can also be a really slippery slope that genetically modifying human beings could be, whether or not people start picking desirable traits, or if it's not just reserved to kind of maybe say people being born immune to polio, coronavirus, HIV/AIDS, stuff like that. So I think you guys can all kind of come to your own conclusion on how you see this being an issue or not, and just maybe respect kind of where this artist was in this time of doing this in 1998, and kind of bringing this conversation to public discourse. Whether or not you think it's art or not, or good art or not, it's up to you, right? Unseen Alchemist. This is some kind of interesting body pieces that actually change color depending on who's wearing them, and depending on their mood, they say. And this is a work that you might critique to say that you have to read about a little bit to really understand. But I also think that there's something really intuitive about it. This building was being torn down, and the artist wanted to create an artwork that kind of slowly started spiraling into something else, moving away from its creator. And it kind of, you get little glimpses as it evolves. So there's kind of one piece of this puzzle that I think is most interesting. But the artist kind of said, I'm interested in kind of letting go in a certain way. The self-organizing systems try to either find or not find symbiosis. I try my best not to intervene with it, he says. I think that um, that's a kind of an interesting notion. But this is perhaps kind of, you know, the piece of the puzzle that people kind of enjoy most. And this is like a little Brancusi sculpture as a shell, right? And so I think it does a really good job of displaying this kind of human nature culture interface, right? As animals will often use what we've left behind. And by making one of the most famous sculptures of all time, just, you know, something that this crustacean has no idea what it is, right? It's just using it because it's what it's found and what it needs. Is kind of, I don't know, to me, it's kind of genius in some way. I just kind of want to show you there at Christie's auction house being sold for $51 million, right? So it's kind of crazy. So it's one of the most famous sculptures of all time. And the way that he kind of embeds this in the work, almost as like some sort of post-civilization moment. The Harrisons are an art science group that they really look at climate change and artistic ways of going about it. And the exhibits end up looking a little bit like this, a series of maps that you can explore and usually some wall didactics. And this is a piece out in California. And the following piece here is a Dead River detail. And this was a restoration project they did near Santa Fe. And oh no, how did it go away? There we go. So they worked with the local community to tell the stories of the natives that lived there about the river itself. So there's kind of the history had been kind of written over as the river was over allocated, overused until what they called kind of died. So they used these symbols that you see in the gallery in the sand, created big structures out there in the river to help slow the water down, and it actually worked, right? So these kind of simulated beaver dams and slowed the water down, rose the water table, and the river is actually kind of living again. I mean, not thriving in the same way, but it actually does flow. So kind of a cool thing. And there's we're not going to watch the video on it because it's kind of long and dated, but they were kind of at the forefront of this environmental kind of art movement. John Ryan Brubaker is a printmaker, and this stuff, he kind of nailed the process. He's from the southeast, where there's a lot of coal mines, and a lot of the rivers out there are contaminated by the coal mines. You see on the right, really, really rich in minerals there. And he wanted to find ways to kind of embrace it. So he, being, he's kind of a photographer, printmaker, he started exposing his prints in the water and getting really interesting results. I think that kind of sepia tone is really beautiful, speaks to the contamination of the river, and he thinks that they're going to kind of evolve and change color over time. So I think that also is kind of interesting when you look at efforts to clean the river and what it might change. The Laboratory of Dilemmas. This is another Venice Biennale piece. There's the Pavilion of Greece there. So I'm just going to watch this real quick.
We are conducting here, in this building, one of the most important experiments in the history of biology. My colleagues from different countries, being world's best scientists, are working here for the future of humanity. It is my great honor and pleasure to present to you today the first results of our study. I think I am an idealist. I'm reading again the Suppliants by Aeschylus. Do you know the King's Dilemma?
So yeah, it might be a little cryptic. But what this piece really is trying to point out, if you were to watch it a couple more times, which I encourage you to, that is a very short version. It's like the trailer of the piece. But what the work is really trying to point out is how sometimes we get blinded by the desire for scientific progress and overlook maybe the humanity of the situation, right? There's a really kind of interesting TV show on Netflix called OA, just two letters, OA, and it kind of talks about the scientist who's totally blinded by the progress that he thinks he's making, and kind of the inhumane acts that come along with it. The Nazis also, they were doing many things inhumane, but one of them was kind of trying to progress scientific knowledge in medicine, and there's a lot of things that are still known today from that, and sometimes people will critique that it's an often critique of the medical field in general, that they don't recognize how that knowledge came about. So Mark Dion is a really interesting artist I like to think of him as like a collage or assemblage artist. He doesn't often ever make anything himself, but his eye for putting material together, I think, is really a genius. Or just a beautiful thing. And this is a tree coming out of the Pacific Northwest, just right off a highway that was falling. He was watching it, waiting for it to fall over, and once it did, they went in and grabbed it. And they had this huge greenhouse waiting for it, and put it in. And it's just, all it is a tree that is living and evolving. So yeah, you might say it's just a piece of, maybe it's just a greenhouse, maybe it's just a tree, right? But he's done a kind of interesting thing here too, where he's gotten a little field guide together to the wildness of this Seattle tree, and they talked about making multiple booklets as different plants come about and different bugs come about, but it's just doing its own thing, right? But it's been reframed outside of the rainforest and inside of a greenhouse for us to look at it in different kind of contextual light. Mia Hunt, ambiguity and analog, she's a geographer. I think she had a PhD in geography, and then she got into art later. But it's really interesting, kind of the urban environment, and he makes these pinhole cameras that capture a place over time. Exquisite Creatures. This was a piece that I just got turned on to recently, and I think it was in Portland last year at a museum. Yeah, it was Portland. Just arranging insects in a really aesthetic way, rather than kind of going the typical entomology way of, in rows, single boxes, scientific names. Just looking at them for the beauty that they have, right? Mandalas and different geographic, kind of geometric patterns. This is wild. You guys have got to Google these names and see them in kind of live. Nervous system of human. It was born from a joke of the guy his girlfriend drew Nervous System smoking a cigarette, and he's like, "That's a good challenge." He's a photographer, and did it. But there's some other pieces of like the nervous system like growing, but I just couldn't do it live in the PowerPoint. Encourage you to take a look. I do just want to take this second to take a look at Colossal. It's a website hopefully you've all looked at by now. But they just have like a science section. This one's illustration and science. And it's just a really sweet resource to look through. You can kind of figure out what kind of work you're going to like, or you do like, and you can kind of look at it by sections. And so we have the subsections, photography and science. Sometimes it just gets like straight science, more or less. Here's a little time lapse. So just scroll through a couple of these here. I just want you to see the aesthetic of the website as well. I kind of like this one, 50th anniversary of landing on the moon. And they're taking data from NASA and printing these little, like, I think they're concrete pieces of the moon. So you can have your own little replica. I'm kind of like a art, science, history sometimes fanatic, and I was just thinking, man, I'd love to have one of those. So you can kind of see a few different ways they're going about that. But it's really an amazing website, just being updated, daily, and you can see how we got, art, design, craft, photography, interviews, and then more. I mean, look at this. This is amazing. So hopefully you could find something that you like, and we just looked at street art, see what we got going on there right now. So hopefully you can take a look through this, and oh yeah, Banksy just did this. I was loving it. Of in his bathroom. But hopefully you take a moment to really dig through Colossal. All right, back to your regularly scheduled program. This is another artist who is really into process. And this is a good piece to show that it's titled "We Are All Astronauts." And it's composed of world globes that have been kind of stripped clean of their geographic information, right? You can see how it's like sanded down. And the artist is really looking at how maps and borders have changed over time. And he's sanded it away, kind of highlighting the variety of success of the kind of shifting geopolitical boundaries, using what he called like an international sandpaper that he made from mineral samples from all the UN recognized countries. So the United Nations, right? You got minerals of kind of silica sand from all those countries, put on a sandpaper, and then sanded these globes down. I mean, I think there's something kind of strangely poetic about that. We're going to move into a little more like art and technology type of it's that last third here. And this video does a good job of just going over a few.
From paintings to photographs to film, artists have always been quick to adapt to new forms of expression. And in the modern day, technology is helping visionaries take their experimentation even further. From technical installations to virtual reality tours, there's a whole heap of boundary-pushing art to be found online.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we begin with a spectacular ballet created by Japanese advertising firm Microad. Dubbed Sky Magic, the performance art at a distance looks like fireflies dancing in the dusk. But on closer inspection, those fireflies are actually drones packed with LED lights, a whole 16,000 of them, all set against the backdrop of beautiful Mount Fuji in Japan. The whole effect is entrancing, and it seems viewers around the world agree, with the video receiving over 340,000 views on Vimeo alone. And we're transported from the pretty to the downright sublime. Canadian studio Irregular fuse art and technology in some very progressive ways. Their installation Control No Control once again takes advantage of LED lights, but this time with an interactive element. Placed in public squares, the sculpture inspires passers-by to use their hands and bodies to play with the sound and graphics running through the cube structure. But one artist focused entirely on internalizing their creativity. Conceptual artist Lisa Park used technology to manipulate water with her brain. For her piece Eunoia, Lisa used a specialized device called the NeuroSky EEG headset to transform her brain activity into streams of data. Her brain waves and eye movements were monitored and then transformed into sound waves. These waves then emerged through 5 speakers placed under shallow dishes of water, which then vibrate in various patterns. And Lisa isn't the only one experimenting with such fusions. Artist Tiayu Leo also blends art and technology in a mind-bending way. Her Magic Forest installation brings sunlight and nature into a dreary Shanghai metro station. By wrapping a ring of LED lights around the station pillars, schools of illuminated 3D printed butterflies sail across the station's sweeping walls. The result is a multi-sensory experience in which it seems as if beams of light are peeking through the clouds on a gloomy day. Tiayu explains the process of selecting technologies for her art pieces.
In order to find the right media to express each piece of work, we always do several things. Keep up to date with different technologies and materials, and understand how these technologies work, what are the advantages and disadvantages, whether it is in line with our concept. After exploring all those things, we then make an informed decision concerning our approach and method.
Now to an artist who is using technology to explore the beauty of physicality. Tobiah Gremler's visionary new series recreates the graceful moves of Kung Fu. But rather than using the motion of real life, the whole creation is formed solely with motion capture and digital manipulation. Gremler slowed down 8 animated moves that were recreated using stretched fabrics and rolling metallic threads. A true visionary taking advantage of the technological landscape in order to turn his idea into a reality. And clearly, many have been excited to gaze into his imagination, with the video reaching over 550,000 views online. But it's not only hardware that is inspiring artists, but software too. Chad Knight utilized photo sharing app Instagram as a playground for his digital art. Tasking himself with a 365-day challenge, Chad wanted to post a new piece of art every single day. And the results are bewildering. Featuring brightly colored skulls and random creatures, Knight's pictures create a world reminiscent of critically acclaimed artist Salvador Dali. Although unlike Knight, Dali did not have 21st century technology to display his work. Fortunately for Dali, a museum in Florida has decided to take on this task for him. The Dali Museum has created a 360-degree virtual reality tour, which includes elements from his famous paintings Angelus and The Lobster. It's to coincide with the museum's exhibition, which explores his work similarities with Walt Disney. And they've even transported the surrealist master into the world of virtual reality. Part of the immersive exhibition sees visitors able to explore the world of Dali through an Oculus Rift headset. From the stroke of a paintbrush to the click of a mouse, technology is helping to take art to the next level. Whether it's helping the creator to realize their vision or pushing them to try new forms of expression, digital art is thriving. And the best part? Most of it is available from the comfort of your very own computer.
So I know some of you out there are experimenting with digital art a little bit, and I just kind of want to encourage you to keep doing so. Whether it's 3D printing in different softwares, right? There's different drawing and painting softwares that you can do right on your iPad or tablet or what have you. I think that those are pretty exciting design project ideas. I've also gotten some really hilarious GIFs. I think that as long as we're being mindful of course content, that's a totally appropriate way to go. But I just kind of want to sum up some of the things that are really taking the art world that the art world's really taking advantage of, right? 3D printing, computer programming, drones, robotics, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and don't forget social media. And we're going to see it's not just a way to share your work. All right, so I'm not going to go into 3D printing too much. I think we all know what it is, but I do want to kind of point out ceramics, upper right-hand corner. It's changing the way that some ceramicists make things right now. And also the Digital Grotesque, this was said to be the first 3D printed room, and we're now seeing homes 3D printed. I'm not going to go into that too much right now, but there it is. Somehow I went right over that. But these are some ceramic vessels, right? 3D printed, and pretty amazing, really, pretty wild. And it's still kind of in the elegant phase of printing. Kind of excited as the technology becomes increasingly commonplace to see how it starts to challenge as well, but push past that kind of aesthetic notion. This is a really weird one, but it's kind of fun to try sometimes. Jenny Odell, the Google drawing game. So you make a drawing, you take a photo or a screenshot, drag it into your Google image search bar, and then you draw whatever comes up the first image under the visually similar. And then you take a photo and then drag that into your Google image search bar and repeat. And so we have some kind of crazy examples here, right? So give it a try if this is your kind of thing. It's like a game of telephone with Google. So it can be kind of funny, right? And this is just an artist who does wacky stuff, right? People younger than me explaining how to do things. I just think it's really funny, honestly. But yeah. And last but not least, the Craigslist farewells. Oh man, there's some heartbreakers and there's some weird ones too. But I'm just hoping it goes to a wonderful woman who deserves it. Proposal gone wrong. Oof. Sad to say, but everything must go. Stuff like that. Michael Wolff. These are the Google Street View has got some wacky stuff out there, and he calls them a series of unfortunate events. And yeah, take it away. The beware of dog, right? Okay, we missed one. There we go. And the pigeon. That's pretty good. There's a lot of really good wildlife stuff caught on Google Earth. So anyway. Facebook hacking Monopoly trilogy. Pretty funny. I'm just going to show the news. Actually, it might not be funny at all to some of you. It might be horrifying. But maybe interesting for most of us.
Like him, for her, want to arrange a date? LovelyFaces.com lets you peruse profiles and admire photos. The web's producers went through 1 million Facebook profiles and chose 250,000. The problem is, this isn't really a dating website. The site's producers call it social commentary on the lack of privacy in the age of Facebook. We talked to Wired.com's Ryan Single via Skype.
They went and they scraped Facebook, basically took the information people had publicly accessible and took 250,000 people's information and put them all on a dating site without their permission.
Ever heard that term, scraping? That's the collection of information, but without the illegal element of hacking.
Projects like this kind of are good for us to kind of stop and think a little bit, like, you know, how is it we want to be on the internet? Why don't we have better choices about how public we are and whether my name and my photo is out there?
We came out to show some people the Lovely Faces website. As a dating site, definitely thumbs down, but the opinions got a lot stronger once we explained how those profiles were collected or scraped.
It's kind of shocking, actually.
It feels like they're invading your privacy.
Now I want to set everything to private and just tell my friends I'll find them, don't find me.
They're distorting information.
Distorted information with some potential for damage. Imagine if you found your husband or girlfriend on the site. Might not be good for the relationship is what I'm saying.
No, yeah, that could cause, drama.
Lovely Faces producers are based in Berlin. Facebook isn't amused, but so far no legal volley to bring the website down. If you find your picture, they claim they'll take it down immediately. Susan Hirostuna, Fox 11 News.
Wow. Right. So just a good reminder that whatever you post, upload to Facebook or Instagram is pretty much public, right? Kind of crazy. Moving right along into some more surveillance stuff. Ai Weiwei piece here. We gotta watch this one on. I can't pull it up. I couldn't embed this, so.
Experience is both with your senses, but also with your connotations you have.
More and more, your traces can be easily traced or found out by higher, superior authorities.
How do you bring together, with your own history, with your own biography, those experiences together, and to have a higher alertness on this?
We're at the Park Avenue Armory taking a look at Hansel and Gretel, which is a site-specific installation by the architects Jacques Herzog, Pierre Desmarons, and the artist Ai Weiwei. The installation takes over the Armory's cavernous drill hall and uses technology to comment on surveillance in public space. As visitors move through the installation, they're recorded using infrared cameras. The images are then broadcast via live stream and projected onto the floor of the Armory.
How can we offer something which can give a new definition about today's condition? Architectural interpretation is very much defined by how people is going to use it, how people experience it. It's really a public space. We see it as a part of a Manhattan life, the very cosmopolitan life.
Jacques and Pierre and Ai Weiwei have spent a lot of time actually designing and thinking about public space and the way the public interacts with space. And I think that we used to think of public space as free. That's not true anymore. Now public space, because of surveillance, is much more dangerous than we thought it was. That metaphor, their name of it, Hansel and Gretel, is kind of perfect because the idea is that Hansel and Gretel lived next to a forest that they probably played in woods every day. And then they find out that there's actually menace in the forest. And I think that's sort of what they're trying to say.
All of us as human beings with all our senses, we would like to experience the space, also acoustically. And that's when the drone came up as a very important element of the project. This humming, but also the wind that they are producing is adding something additional. And ideally, we would also want to catch the noise which is in the space. If someone screams or shouts or sings, that this should be recorded as the images are being recorded.
I think to come back to the title, Hansel and Gretel, the people project their traces, so that adds something scary but also playful. When we came here, I think that neither you, Weiwei, nor and I expected that people are even dancing. So it adds something playful, which I think is nice. That it's really about moving, and behaving and doing things that are not expected.
As an artist in China, my life have very different conditions. I've been heavily surveilled through my internet or my telephone being tapped, and the real people following me wherever I go. And so those become part of my life. You always see yourself or a record somewhere or being recorded the way you can never even imagine or cannot really comprehend why that's necessary. But this is today's life, and willingly or not, we are being recorded.
So I do know that there is definitely a kind of rebuttal to their argument of being recorded. I've read different studies and listened to podcasts that say the more surveillance we have, the safer our cities will actually be, because police then have a bird's eye view. They can see where something goes wrong. They're able to track the crime easier. But then on the reverse of that, there is, the more that we program security systems or surveillance systems with our current judicial laws, so they might say that they're engendered or maybe racially biased. So, it's kind of a difficult conversation, right? I'm going to be kind of moving through these because I'm realizing that I'm kind of going over on time. But these are some computer generated pieces from famous nude paintings. So there's like robot art competitions right now. And so I just kind of want to ask you, is it art if it's created by a robot, right? Does art have to be created by a human? And what happens when art is increasingly mechanized? I heard something very poetic recently. It's like the job of science is to make us feel like very small sometimes, insignificant even. And then the job of art in the humanities is to kind of make us feel empowered, right? So I guess I wonder, what those people would say about art that's created by robots or artificial intelligence, right? Like where do we think intelligence lies? And if maybe if an artificial intelligence system is created off of an artist, is it still that artist's work then? If that AI has all of the artist's kind of ways of thinking. In music, right? We definitely see this happening already. Amper is an artificial intelligence composer, performer, and producer that empowers you to instantly create and customize original music for your content. So what, I guess I just ask, in a world that's increasingly mechanized, what do you think this is going to do to the art world? Do you think it's still art? And just like, it's a humanities question, right? For us all to just think about. Alternate realities, right? We're gonna more and more VR, definitely more and more VR. And I think that coronavirus will be a historic moment for a lot of reasons. I think industry is going to shift. We're seeing it already with kind of oil projections, but we're seeing museums also really start to think hard about how you are able to experience a museum in a time when they're going to be closed for potentially a long time, right? And so there's a big push. We saw the Salvador Dali kind of virtual reality thing just a moment ago. There's a big push right now about how to augment the reality, right, of a museum. And if maybe that, they've already been really pushing the cell phone use in a museum. Maybe they're going to be bringing it right to your cell phone. So how does that change? So we're just going to do an artist spotlight like we always do. And I hope you enjoy. Free lecture. It's only kind of brief overview. So if you like what you're seeing, just another plug for Colossal. This is colossal.com for some amazing work, and hopefully this inspires a couple design projects as well. Have a good day.